Every family has its hidden stories. Some are filled with joy, some with regret, and others with secrets that no one dares to speak aloud. When Emma married Daniel, she thought she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one filled with love, stability, and the warmth of family. Daniel was kind, patient, and deeply devoted to her. But there was one shadow in their home that Emma could never quite escape: his mother. Margaret. From the very first day, Margaret made it clear that Emma was not the kind of daughter-in-law she had hoped for. She would criticize the meals Emma cooked, compare her to other women in the neighborhood, and remind her subtly or directly that she would never truly be part of the family. To outsiders, Margaret appeared strict but fair. To Emma, she was an unrelenting presence, watching every move, waiting for mistakes. Daniel often tried to ease the tension. He would hold Emma's hand, whisper that things would get better, and ask his mother to show patience. But deep down, Emma wondered if this was the life she had signed up for, a marriage where love was tested not just by daily struggles, but by a wall of disapproval from the woman who should have been a second mother to her. Emma told herself to endure. She believed that with time, Margaret might soften. After all, hearts can change, can't they? But what Emma didn't know was that Margaret's coldness was not just about control or disappointment. Hidden in the house was an old letter tucked away in a drawer, its paper yellowed with age. And in that letter lay a truth that would shatter everything Emma thought she knew about herself, her husband, and the family she had married into. This is not just a story about conflict between a mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law. It's a story about identity, betrayal, and a secret buried so deep that when it finally came to light, it changed all of their lives forever. The first weeks of Emma's marriage had been a whirlwind of change. Moving into Daniel's family home was not what she had imagined when she dreamed of married life. She had always pictured a small apartment, just the two of them, where they could build their own world together. But Daniel insisted on staying with his mother Margaret, at least until they saved enough to buy a place of their own. At first, Emma tried to approach everything with optimism. She cooked meals, cleaned the house, and greeted Margaret with respect every morning. She hoped her efforts would be seen, that her sincerity would bridge whatever invisible gap lay between them. But Margaret rarely acknowledged her kindness. Instead, she found fault in almost everything Emma did. "This soup is too salty," Margaret would say, pushing the bowl aside. "You folded the laundry all wrong. Do you expect Daniel to wear wrinkled shirts to work?" Every word stung Emma, not because of the criticism itself, but because it carried a tone of contempt, as if Margaret had already judged her unworthy. No matter what she did, Daniel noticed the tension. Of course. At night, he would wrap his arms around Emma and whisper, "Just give her time. She's been alone for so long since my father passed. She doesn't know how to let someone new into her life." Emma nodded, trying to believe him. But deep inside, she wondered if time was really the answer. DCS, or if she was simply fighting a battle she could never win. The turning point came one rainy afternoon. Margaret had left the house to visit a neighbor, and Emma stayed behind to tidy the living room. As she dusted an old wooden cabinet that stood against the wall, she noticed one of the drawers was slightly open. Out of habit, she pushed it in, but curiosity got the better of her. Inside were stacks of old papers, bills, letters, and photographs. Emma hesitated. She wasn't the type to invade someone's privacy. But as she shuffled a few envelopes to straighten them, one particular letter caught her eye. The paper was fragile, its edges yellowed with time. On the front was a name, her name. Emma, her heart skipped a beat. Why would her mother-in-law have a letter addressed to her, written long before she had even joined the family? With trembling hands, she unfolded the letter. The handwriting was elegant, yet shaky, as if written in desperation. The words blurred as Emma read, her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't just a letter, it was a confession, and in that confession, One line stood out so clearly it felt like the room had fallen silent around her. If one day you ever meet Emma, please take care of her. She is not to blame for what happened. She is my daughter. Emma's eyes widened. Her hands shook so violently that the paper nearly slipped to the floor. "Daughter," she whispered to herself. The words echoed in her mind like thunder. She read the letter again, desperate to make sense of it. The writer spoke of regret, of choices made years ago, of a child given away under circumstances too painful to describe. And that child was her. Emma stumbled back, clutching the letter to her chest. Questions flooded her mind faster than she could contain them. Why did Margaret have this letter? Who had written it? And why had no one ever told her? When the door creaked open and Margaret stepped back inside, shaking the rain from her umbrella, Emma froze. The letter was still in her hands. Margaret's eyes fell on it instantly, and in that moment, Emma saw something she had never seen before in her mother-in-law's expression: fear. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of raindrops pattering against the window filled the silence, heavy and suffocating. Emma clutched the letter so tightly her knuckles turned white, while Margaret stood frozen near the door. Her umbrella dripping onto the floor. "Where did you get that?" Margaret's voice was sharp, but underneath it trembled something Emma had never heard before. Fear mixed with desperation. Emma's throat tightened. "Why? Why do you have this letter? Who wrote it, and why is it about me?" Margaret's eyes darted to the paper, then back. To Emma, for a second, the older woman's stern mask cracked, revealing a storm of emotions buried deep beneath her usual composure. She walked forward slowly, as if each step weighed her down. "You shouldn't have found that," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You weren't supposed to see it." Emma felt her chest tighten. "Not supposed to see it?" "Margaret, this letter says I'm someone's daughter. That I was given away. What does it mean? What aren't you telling me?" Margaret sat down heavily on the couch, her shoulders slumping in a way Emma had never seen before. For years, Margaret had stood tall, commanding every room she entered. But now she looked small, fragile. "Even Emma," she began, her eyes fixed on the floor. "There are things about your past that you don't know. Things your parents never told you." Emma shook her head, panic rising in her chest. "No, my parents, they loved me. They raised me. Are you saying they weren't my real parents?" Margaret closed her eyes, the silence answering more clearly than words. The room spun around Emma. She felt betrayed, lost, as though the ground beneath her had been ripped away. "So all my life has been a lie," she choked out. "Who am I, Margaret? Who wrote this letter?" Margaret finally looked at her, and for the first time, Emma saw something softer in her eyes. Not contempt, not judgment, but sorrow. "Your biological mother wrote it," Margaret said quietly. "Her name was Anna, and she was my sister." Emma staggered backward, her mind struggling to grasp the words. "Your sister, my mother." Margaret nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. "Yes, Anna made mistakes, choices she regretted deeply. When you were born, circumstances forced her to give you up. She wrote me that letter before she left town, begging me to watch over you if fate ever brought you into my life again." Emma's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her whole identity had just unraveled in a single breath. "Why didn't you tell me before? Why hide this from me? And why treat me the way you did?" Margaret's hands trembled as she wrung them together. "Because every time I looked at you, I saw her. I saw my sister, the sister I lost, the choices she made, the pain she caused. I thought if I pushed you away, if I kept my distance, it would hurt less." Her voice cracked. "But instead, I only hurt you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. All those years of criticism, the coldness, the disapproving glares, they hadn't come from hatred, but from unresolved grief and guilt. But knowing that didn't erase the pain Emma had carried since the day she entered this house. "You had 20 years to tell me the truth," Emma said, her voice shaking. "Instead, you made me feel unwanted." You made me feel like I'd never belong, Margaret's. Tears finally spilled over. I know, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. But please understand, May was afraid. Afraid of losing you the way I lost Anna. Afraid you would hate me if you knew the truth. The room fell silent again. But this time the silence was different, heavy. Not with anger, but with the weight of revelation. Emma didn't know what to say, what to feel. Part of her wanted to scream. Another part wanted to weep. And yet another part wanted to walk away and never look back. When Daniel came home later that evening, he found his wife sitting on the couch, pale and shaken, while his mother sat across from her, silently crying. He looked from one to the other, confusion written all over his face. What happened? He asked, his voice tight with worry. Emma looked. At him, her eyes red and swollen, the letter clutched in her hand. Her voice trembled as she whispered, Daniel, I think your mother knows who my real family is. Daniel froze, his gaze bouncing between Emma's trembling hands and his mother's tear-streaked face. He had never seen either of them like this. Seema so broken, Margaret so undone. The room felt suffocating, like the air itself was weighed down by secrets. Emma, what are you talking about? He asked cautiously, stepping closer. Emma extended the letter, her fingers shaking. Read it, she whispered. Daniel took the fragile paper, his brow furrowing as his eyes scanned the words. He read them once, then again, his face paling with each line. When he finally looked up, his expression was one of disbelief. This is your Anna's daughter. That Anna, my aunt, is your mother. Emma nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Your mother just confirmed it. Daniel turned to Margaret, his voice cracking. Mom, is this true? Margaret buried her face in her hands for a moment before answering. When she lifted her head, her eyes glistened with tears. Yes, Daniel, it's true. Emma's biological mother was my sister, Anna. Daniel staggered back as, if the words were a physical blow, why didn't you ever tell me? Why didn't you tell her? All these years, Emma has been living here under this roof, and neither of us knew. Margaret's shoulders shook as she tried to explain. I couldn't, Daniel. I swore to Anna I would protect the secret until the right time. But the truth is, there never seemed to be a right time. And the longer I waited, the harder it became. To speak, Emma's voice cracked with pain. So instead, you chose to make me feel like an outsider. You knew who I was all along, and yet you judged me, criticized me, made me feel like I didn't belong in this family. I was wrong, Margaret admitted, tears flowing freely now. Every harsh word, every cold glance set wasn't because I hated you. It was because every time I looked at you, I saw Anna. I saw the sister I lost, the choices she made, the pain she left behind. I couldn't separate you from her, and I punished you for it. I punished you for her mistakes. Daniel's hands tightened around the letter. His voice trembled with anger. Mom, do you realize what you've done? Emma deserved your love, not your resentment. She's my wife, the woman I chose to build my life with, and all this time you've been holding a secret that could have destroyed her. Margaret shook her head, sobbing. I know I failed you both. But you must understand, when Anna disappeared, she left behind so much pain. She was only 19. When she had Emma, our parents forced her to give the baby away, and she was never the same after that. She blamed herself until the day she died. Emma gasped, her voice barely audible. She's dead. Margaret nodded slowly. She died years ago, before you and Daniel ever met. That letter was the last thing she gave me. She begged me to find you one day to make sure you were safe. When Daniel brought you home, when I realized who you were, I didn't know how to face it. It felt like fate, but also like a cruel twist of it. The weight of the revelation pressed heavily on all three of them. Emma felt as though she was floating outside of herself, unable to grasp the enormity of what she had just learned. Her mother was gone, her past a lie. And her mother-in-law, once her harshest critic, was tied to her by blood. Daniel knelt beside Emma, taking her hands in his eyes burned with tears. "Emma, listen to me. None of this changes how I feel about you. You are my wife. You are the woman I love. Whatever your past is, whatever secrets were hidden, you are still the same person I married." Emma looked at him, her vision blurred by tears. She wanted to believe him, to hold on to his words like a lifeline, but part of her couldn't shake the bitterness. "But your mother, she knew. She let me suffer in silence. How do I live in this house, knowing all of this now?" Margaret reached forward, her voice trembling. "Emma, please. I can't undo the pain I've caused you, but I want to make it right. I want you to know that, despite everything, I do care for you. I always did, which is buried under my grief, my anger, my inability to forgive the past." The three of them sat in silence, the storm outside mirroring the chaos in their hearts. Emma felt torn between rage and compassion, betrayal and longing. She wanted answers to questions that could no longer be answered: why her mother had given her up, why Margaret had chosen silence, why fate had tangled their lives in such a cruel way. And though she didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning. The letter had opened a door, but behind it lay even deeper truths that would test not only Emma's marriage, but also the fragile bond she might still salvage with the woman she had spent so long resenting. The night after the revelation was sleepless for all three of them. Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the words of the letter replaying over and over in her mind. "She is my daughter. She is not to blame." The phrase echoed like a haunting lullaby, one that offered neither comfort nor rest. Daniel slept fitfully beside her, his hand wrapped tightly around hers, as though he feared she might vanish in the night. Margaret's room down the hall remained dark, but Emma could hear muffled sobs through the walls. By morning, the silence in the house was unbearable. Emma finally confronted Margaret again over breakfast. "I need to know everything," Emma said firmly. Her voice shook, but her eyes were steady. "No more half-truths. No more silence. Tell me about my mother. Tell me why she gave me away." Margaret set down her cup of tea, her fingers trembling. She looked older than Emma had ever seen her, as though the weight of decades was pressing down on her shoulders. Anna was young. Too young, Margaret began softly. She fell in love with a man who promised her the world, but he wasn't who he claimed to be. He left her before you were even born. Our parents were furious, ashamed. They forced her to give you up for adoption, insisting it was the only way to protect the family's name. Emma's stomach churned, so I was abandoned because I was an embarrassment. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. No, you were never the embarrassment. The shame was our parents, Anna's, even mine. But Anna loved you. She loved you more than anything. I begged them to let her keep you, but they refused. She held you for only a few hours before they took you away. It broke her. She never recovered from losing you. Emma's chest ached, each word cutting deeper. And you knew all this time. Margaret nodded, her tears falling freely. Yes, I searched for you when you were a child, but your adoptive family moved often, and I lost track of you. I thought I'd never see you again. Then one day, Daniel brought you home, and suddenly, there you were, the little girl my sister had wept for. And instead of embracing you, I let my grief turn into bitterness. I took out my guilt on you. Emma swallowed hard, fighting back tears. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I spent months wondering why you hated me, why nothing I did was ever good enough. And all along, I was family to you. Daniel, who had been silently listening, finally spoke. His voice was heavy with anger and sorrow. Mom, you had the chance to turn this into something beautiful. To welcome Emma not only as my wife, but as your niece. Instead, you let the past poison everything. Margaret's shoulders shook as she wept. I know. I failed both of you. But please believe me when I say I never stopped loving Anna. And I never stopped caring about you, even if I didn't show it." Emma's tears finally spilled over. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she whispered. "You've stolen years. From me, years where I could have known the truth. Years where I could have made peace with who I am. And now it's too late. My mother is gone." The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel reached for Emma's hand, squeezing it tightly. Margaret looked at her with pleading eyes, but Emma turned away, unable to meet her gaze. For the first time, Margaret realized the depth of the damage her silence had caused. It wasn't just about secrets. It was about trust that might never be rebuilt. Later that evening, Emma went back to the drawer where she had found the letter. She searched through the pile of old papers, desperate for more pieces of her past, and hidden beneath faded envelopes and photographs. She discovered something else, a small locked box. When she brought it to Daniel, he looked at her with wide eyes. "Do you think it belonged to Anna?" Emma nodded, her heart pounding. "If it does, maybe there's more she wanted me to know." The box was locked, but inside, Emma felt certain, lay the final pieces of the puzzle answers that could either bring her closer to healing or shatter what little piece remained. And as she held the box in her hands, she realized the truth wasn't done with her yet. The box was small, no bigger than a diary, and its brass lock was tarnished with age. Emma held it as though it were made of glass, afraid that even the slightest movement might shatter the fragile connection it held to her past. Daniel fetched a small toolkit, and with a gentle twist of a screwdriver, the lock finally gave way. The lid creaked open. Inside were faded photographs, folded letters, and a silver locket with initials engraved on it. Emma's breath caught as she picked it up. Emma and Anna, she whispered, running her thumb over the engraving. Beneath the locket lay a stack of letters tied with a ribbon, their paper yellowed but still legible. With trembling hands, Emma untied the ribbon and unfolded the first letter. It was written in the same elegant, desperate handwriting as the letter she had found earlier. "My dearest Emma, if you ever find these letters, know that I never abandoned you out of choice. I was forced to let you go. The man I loved, your father, was not the man I thought he was. He betrayed me, and our family despised me for it. But you were my greatest blessing, and I never stopped loving you." Emma pressed the paper to her lips, her tears soaking the ink. Daniel sat beside her, his arm wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Margaret, who had been standing quietly in the doorway, let out a muffled sob. Emma read the next letter. "I left you in the care of a family who promised to raise you with love. I prayed they would give you the life I could not, but not a day has gone by that I didn't ache to hold you, to hear your laugh, to see you grow. If you are reading this, I hope you know you were never unwanted. You were my entire world." Each letter deepened Emma's heartbreak, but also filled her with something she hadn't felt since discovering the first secret: clarity. Anna had loved her. Anna had fought for her. The narrative Emma had feared that she was abandoned because she wasn't good enough was a lie. And yet, beneath the last letter in the stack, Emma found one more envelope. This one was sealed with wax, darker and heavier than the rest. She hesitated before breaking it open. The words inside chilled her to her core. "If Emma ever finds you, Margaret, you must tell her the truth, not only about me, but about her father. She deserves to know. His name is Richard, and he is closer to her than she realizes." Emma's eyes darted to Margaret. "Richard? Who is Richard?" Margaret's face went pale. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling violently. Daniel looked between them, confused. "Mom, who is Richard?" Margaret's lips quivered. She looked as though the weight of decades was pressing down on her all at once. Finally, she whispered, "Richard was not just any man. He was my husband." Daniel's father. The room fell deathly silent. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. "What are you saying?" Think Daniel's father, your husband, was my father too? Margaret covered her face with her hands. Yes, Anna fell in love with him when she was young, before he married me. She didn't know he was already promised to me. By the time she discovered the truth, she was pregnant with you. Our parents forced her to give you away to protect the family from scandal. And I married him carrying the weight of that betrayal. Emma stumbled back, her world spinning. The man she had grown up believing was only her father-in-law was. In reality, her biological father. And Daniel, her husband, was her half-brother. Daniel's face drained of all color. No, he whispered, shaking his head. That can't be true. This is insane. Margaret's sobs filled the silence. I never wanted you to know. I thought I could take this secret to my grave. But the truth has a way of finding its way to the surface. Emma's hands shook as she dropped the letter to the floor. The walls closed in around her, her marriage, her family. Her very identity collapsing into a nightmare she could barely comprehend. The secret had destroyed everything. The silence that followed Margaret's confession was unbearable. The walls of the house seemed to close in on them, heavy with years of secrets and betrayal. Emma could hardly breathe. Her chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow bursts as she tried to comprehend what she had just heard. Daniel sat stunned, staring at the floor as though searching for answers in the wood grain. His hands were clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. So all this time, he said hoarsely, my father was Emma's father too. Margaret nodded slowly, shame etched into every line of her face. Yes, he betrayed both Anna and me. And I carried the shame, the guilt, and the anger for decades. But I never imagined fate would bring Emma back into our lives like this. Emma felt the room spinning. She pressed her palms to her face as if trying to hold herself together. All these years, I thought I was just your disapproving mother-in-law's target. I thought you hated me for who I was. But it was because you knew. You knew, and you said nothing. Her voice broke into sobs. Do you know what it feels like to marry the man you love, only to discover he might also be your brother? Margaret's tears flowed freely. I wanted to protect you both. I thought if I stayed silent, you could live your lives without this shadow. But secrets, they don't stay buried forever. Daniel finally lifted his head, his face pale with anguish. He turned to Emma, his eyes full of pain. Emma, I swear to you, none of this changes how I feel about you. I didn't know, couldn't have known. You are my wife, the woman I love. But now his voice cracked, the words catching in his throat. Now I don't know what we're supposed to do. Emma clutched the silver locket in her hand, her tears falling onto the engraved initials. We were building a life together, and now that life is gone, stolen from us by choices made before we were even born. The three of them sat in silence, broken in their own ways, mourning the mother she never knew. Daniel mourning the future. He had dreamed of Margaret mourning the years she had wasted in silence and bitterness. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice steadier than she felt. We can't undo the past. We can't change who our parents were or the choices they made. But we can decide how we move forward. Daniel's eyes searched hers desperately. Do you mean we stay together or we let go? Emma shook her head, her heart heavy. I don't know. I need time. I need to understand who I am before I can decide who I want to be with. But I do know one thing. I can't live in this house anymore, surrounded by these ghosts. Margaret broke down, her sobs echoing through the room. Emma, please, don't hate me. I was wrong, but I did love you. I loved you in the only way I knew how, even if it came out as cruelty. I wanted to protect you from the truth. But I see now I only destroyed everything. Emma wiped her tears, her voice heavy with exhaustion. I don't hate you, Margaret. But forgiveness fortunes will take time. For now, I need space. That evening, Emma packed a small bag and left the house with Daniel by her side. They didn't speak much as they walked away, hand in hand. There, hearts weighed down by an unbearable truth. They didn't know what their future held, or if their love could survive this revelation. But they knew one thing for certain: secrets, no matter how deeply buried, always find a way to rise to the surface. And sometimes, when they do, they change everything. The rain had stopped by the time Emma and Daniel reached the quiet street. Outside, the air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings, though neither of them could yet see where their path would lead. All they could do was keep walking, together for now, into the uncertain tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, then you already understand what Real Moments is all about. Life is not always simple. Behind closed doors, families carry secrets, regrets, and memories that shape who we become. Sometimes those truths break us, but sometimes they give us the strength to begin again. Here on this channel, we share stories that remind us we are not alone in our struggles. Stories of love and betrayal, of forgiveness and healing, of choices that change everything. Each one is a mirror of real life, messy, painful, beautiful, and deeply human. If you found yourself holding your breath during this story, if you felt Emma's heartbreak, Daniel's confusion, or Margaret's regret deep in your chest, then I invite you to stay with us. There are many more stories waiting to be told, each with its own lesson, each with its own power to move you. By subscribing, you become part of a community that values truth and emotion. A community that believes even in the darkest revelations, there is always a path forward. And maybe, just maybe, hearing someone else's journey will help you make sense of your own. So if you don't want to miss the next story, one that might surprise you, inspire you, or even change the way you see your own life, click that subscribe button now. Turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when a new chapter is shared. Thank you for watching, for feeling, and for being here. This is more than just a channel. It's a space where hearts connect through stories that matter. Subscribe today, and let's keep walking this journey together through every twist, every heartbreak, and every real moment.